Happy birthday, Mr. Smith. Happy birthday, Mr. Smith.
Keep going.
Happy birthday, Mr. Prophet. Happy birthday.
Big ending.
To you.
I believe the church is in better condition than it has been at any time in its entire history. My beloved brethren and sisters,
welcome to Once Upon a Mormon,
another testament of religious abuse.
So many have been hurt.
Persecutions may rage, mobs may combine.
whom shall we go?
Sown in corruption. We need you.
Never again.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, welcome back to another episode of Once Upon a Mormon. My name is Brother Hiram. And...
Yep, I am Sister May.
you just can't wait. You just have to, just so enthusiastic.
I just have to be like, yes.
Yes,
Here I am.
Well, we're actually joined again by the wonderful Lenora, who is back for part 2. Welcome back, Lenora.
Oh, thank you.
Well, we had a lot happen last episode. We listened to the tea. We drank some tea. It was piping hot. And we're back for more. So, as a bit of a recap from last episode, Lenora has joined us just to talk about her upbringing in the church, her experiences, and I guess a little bit about who she is. So we heard about, growing up in a Mormon community in Arizona and about the pressures that come from being part of an all-inclusive and, I could say, drowning community. You can't get away from it. And also, what it's like to come out of that to a different country as well. So I guess, do we have any thoughts or any comments that we want to make thinking about last episode before we continue?
None that are, all the ones I can think of are just, super fucking deep for the start of an episode.
That's fair. Well, I guess without further ado, we'll get back into it. So without getting back into clunky, I keep hitting the mic. So when you look at where you are today, you've been out of the church. How long have you been out of the church for? How long has it been since?
Ooh, I haven't been to church. It might be pushing 10 years.
10 years. That is quite a feat. That's a lot of time to think about things.
It is.
So looking back now for where you are right now, how do you see you being raised in the church impacting yourself, your family, how you are and how you process life? How do you see that impacting you today?
Oh, I mean, just like anybody, anything that you grow up with is going to impact you. And I definitely know, actually, surprisingly enough, even when I was right into the church still, and still living in America, I remember vocally letting my mom hear my grief about what it was like to be raised the way that I was. And I was kind of giving it to her, just saying how much I kind of resented it, which is funny because I was going to church at the time. But now I'm like, you know what? I get it. Everybody has their own path and blah, blah, blah. But, so what was the question though about?
So I guess how do you see it impacting? So as an example, we were talking before this episode about some of the things people do when they're fresh out of the church. So there's this guy we've been speaking with recently. He's reached out on a couple of post-Mormon pages, and he's telling us what it's like that now that he's been out less than a year. He's drinking alcohol, he's drinking coffee, and it's really fresh. Whereas me personally, I've been out of the church for nearly 8 years now, and drinking alcohol is normal. I fixate on different parts of my life where I went through a wine phase, I went through a coffee phase where I just fixate on it, and it becomes almost normal. However, there are little bits in the back of my mind that still pull me back to what I've always known. Do you still find some of that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. But at the same time, I think because of the time that has passed and just, life experiences in general, I think that I am at a point where I'm just you know what? I try not to let I try not to let anything kind of cap my beliefs. And I just think, you know what? Yeah, sure, I was raised thinking this is wrong. But when I come to it now, I'm like, okay, but why? Why was I told that this is wrong? And do I care?
Well, I guess that's right. Like you sort of have to look at it at a moral perspective versus a rule-based perspective. Like let's take alcohol for example. I know that you don't personally drink a lot, but I guess how does it translate from your Mormon days to now when it comes to alcohol?
Oh yeah, that's a big one because I would never have even had a sip. Like not even a sip, even of coffee. I had an aunt that was not Mormon, and she had a coffee and it smelled amazing. She's like, just taste it, just a little bit. And I was with her. She wasn't a Mormon. I was in like a safe place, like a secret place, like relatively speaking. And I was so tempted. I think I was 18 at the time, and she was like, here, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And now I'm just like, oh yeah, I'll have a taste. It's just like, I don't know. I just kind of don't. Yeah, I still have my own beliefs about, like how I want to live my life, but I'm not going to let my indoctrination rule, even though, like you said, there is kind of those little strings pulling at you like, oh, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, so, like, I don't know, I kind of see that, like, you don't limit yourself to one kind of ideal or, like, belief system. Yeah. So, yeah, well, I guess that kind of then goes into how does the church continue to impact you today? Like, do you find that things still kind of, I guess, trigger you, or like how is that?
Yeah, I think that for the most part, because I haven't gone to church in so long, I was kind of, out of the woods, I thought. But then I got to this point where I had moved and recently split, and so it's like I didn't have anybody to kind of fall back on, and I really needed some help, like moving furniture, and you can always rely on the Mormons to help with that kind of stuff. And
they just turn up.
Yeah. It's like they can sense it. Like
my Mormon senses a TV.
Someone is moving. Yes, let's go.
But I actually reached out to them because I was trying desperately to get somebody else, and then I was like, I'm just gonna call the Mormons. And so they came and helped, and that was kind of it. So now they're back in my life, and look,
they won't leave now. It's like a bad smell.
So yeah, I feel like I just kind of got myself into that one. But at the same time, I'm like, I can kind of see the benefit of it, of kind of still being connected to a church. But I find that now I really have to be sure, and I haven't, to be honest, yet. I really need to start being quite firm with my boundaries, because I don't know, it's so weird. Like, they're kids, like I'm in my 40s and they come to the door as kids, and I don't know, it's like you just go back into this mentality of, oh, it's the missionaries, come in, and like, sure, you have family members that have been on missions and you hear what it's like. So you're like, yes, come in. Let me, give you a break from what you normally do. But yeah, it's just that it's almost like going back in time, and I feel below them still when they come to my house today. I'm just like, why do I feel this way? Like, I feel like, yeah, they're above me still. It's weird.
That's actually really quite interesting. It's a very valid point is, without you realizing, as soon as they show up at the door, they've got the badges on, they're there, they're presented, it's sort of like, oh, I need to fall back in line. And it's not that you're thinking about it, it's not that you're purposely doing it. It's just that brainwashing that we're the same. That brainwashing is just there, and it's pushed down until all of a sudden the sleeper agent is activated. Like Sister May was showing us some text messages before, and I didn't say it, but your response to the missionaries when they texted you, you're just sort of like, oh, sorry, just a little bit busy, instead of being like, no, fuck off.
Yeah.
I was thinking it, but yeah, there was just like that thing or inside me that was like, oh no, like I have to be nice to the missionaries, like they're doing a hard job. But then, the next morning, because I worked during the day, and so I was having a big shift, so I was dropping my daughter off at my parents' place. I walk in and they're like, oh, May, meet our friends that we have over. It was the fucking missionaries. They popped over and they were like, hi. And I turned around and I was like, all right, I'll see you guys later. Bye.
Just drop the kid in the room.
Yeah, literally. I usually stay for a little bit, and it wasn't a nice breakfast. Like, we have a lot of European, like, background, so it was like a nice, good spread of breakfast, and I was like keen and hungry, and missionaries were there. So I was like, I know, right? This is why we can't have nice things. But they were actually really sweet missionaries. I stayed around for a little bit and said hi, but they were nice and respectful. And
also, like, we when Sister Donna moved, I mean, Sister May decided to, not come along to that one.
Yeah, thanks to my child getting violently ill and throwing up all over the house.
It's still your fault as not a priesthood holder. It's still your fault.
I'm the mother. I need to take responsibility.
Like, the missionaries came around and, we got them a bit of lunch, and at first they're like, oh, these guys are members or less actives or something like that. And then they're sort of chatting us up the way that missionaries do, not in a, sexual way. I mean, one of them was kind of cute, but that's not the point. And I'm just like, you know what? This conversation's not going to go anywhere. So I just came out and I'm like, actually, I had my records removed a few months ago, and I have a podcast where I talk about my experiences within the church and how that's impacted me in my day-to-day life. And the look on their face is just like, cannot compute.
Yeah.
Just, they don't know how to do it. It's not in the training.
We're not trained for this.
It's like, what do we say? What do we do? Like, as a missionary, you don't want to offend people, but at the same time, like, it's outside of the scope of their script.
Yeah.
I would bet you any money that the next, like, district meeting, zone meeting, like, mission conference, that would have been a question. What do we do when someone says they have an anti-Mormon podcast? That would have been a question for the mission president.
And it's funny because they're like, the missionaries in the area that I live in, and, like, I've texted them and called them a couple of times, and they have not called me back since. I'm on the do not contact list.
Perfect.
Perfect. I guess it's, you sort of look at all these experiences as they come along, and you take lessons, you take, points where you're like, look, this doesn't sit right with me. I like this, I don't like that. Leading you now 10 years later to where you are today, where do your beliefs sit? What, do you even believe in God?
Oh, see, that's a tough one because I do believe in something, but I don't know if you could give it a name. I don't know. It's just like one of those, I just don't think that we can even, I think that we can try to explain, like the whole, what do people call it, like the source, or, just trying to make it unifying, the one, or, like whatever. But I believe in something higher, and I believe that we're all connected. But I don't know. It's kind of fun to muse about what God could be or is, but I just don't think that we can comprehend. And I'm cool with that. I'm cool with not knowing. I just think it's comes down to living a good life and not being a jerk.
That's fair.
Yeah, I was actually talking to my nan about that because I'm here at Brother Hiram's house, finally out of Whoop Whoop. So whenever I come down, I take my nan to IKEA, and we actually had a really big discussion about that today because I don't talk to many of my extended family because I've left the church, and how dare I have trauma when they've had good experiences with the church. So obviously I'm not allowed to have any bad experiences with the church. So I don't talk to any of them, and I was kind of talking to Nan about how that really upset me because I love having a family, and I was like, look, like it just really sucks. And yeah, Nan was like, well, I can't believe they have been so judgmental, and it's just not Christ-like of them. My nan's a TBM, true believing, goes to church, and just I think there is a huge difference in the way that you treat someone, I guess, in regards to what you believe. It makes a huge difference in who you are as a person. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Like, I look at my family and, you know, the dynamic, especially, you know, the past couple of years with COVID, has shifted completely. There is one active member left in my immediate family, and that's my father. Like, even my mum, you know, she's still in the church. You know, she still wears garments, all that type of stuff, but she hasn't been in years. And, you know, every time I talk to her about it, it seems like she's a little bit further towards the edge. Whereas, you know, Dad still goes through the routines. Like, it was only today I was talking to Mum, and like, she did it. I think I sort of half mentioned it in the previous episode. Now I remember what I was actually talking about. You know, we're talking about an old friend of mine from church. His dad has now left the church. He was doing the first day course she was on, and you know, this friend of mine, he came over the other week to pick up a bed, and we got chatting and sort of just, you know, catching up. We haven't seen each other for a year or two, and he was telling me how his parents left the church because they realised how much time and energy it took away from their family. For a church that preaches to be family-centred, all they demand is time away from your family. And I said that to Mum. I said, look, you know, I love my father. I do. He's painful a lot of the time, and he's very much ingrained in the church and has a lot of those negative, I guess, attributes about him, like misogyny and, you know, just, you know, gaslighting and things like that. But I still love him. But one of the things I do hold against him, not in an aggressive way, but, you know, in a soft way, is that he has always put the church ahead of family. There's a church event I've got to be at. Oh, I can't come because I've got to do this. And it's not until my youngest brother that he started to soften that a little bit. You know, over COVID, instead of going to church for the hour, they would go for a drive as a family. But when I was growing up, we didn't get that. It was, we have to go to church because Dad worked every day of the week. He would leave, you know, drop me off at seminary, take me home, and then he'd be gone. And then he'd get home late. He'd get home, he'd, you know, go down and fart around in the shed and then have dinner and then go to bed. And, you know, we didn't get time with our father. It was Mum who raised us. And that's difficult because now I'm only just building a relationship with my father. But for all those years, he put the church ahead of his own family. And that is something I see with so many families in the church. And it's so sad because considering they preach about families being together forever, what about now?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't families be together now?
Yeah, I'm pretty much exactly like my upbringing. My dad was a bishop, never home, always at church all day Sunday, and every other night was off, you know, having meetings, and then you'd get the phone call from sister so-and-so who called every other day, oh, my toe hurts or my cat's sick, and off he'd go off to do his priesthood duty. And like, my dad was everything to me as a kid. I don't think my mum listens to this, but my mum and I never had a good relationship. Like, she's half the reason that Dad and I left the house when I was so young. So that was really difficult not having my safe parent around because he was so busy with the church that I pretty much just had to withdraw into myself and put my energy into other things because I wasn't able to have that safe space to be a child.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when the proclamation to the world, is that what it was called? Proclamation of the family to the world or whatever. I remember when that came out, and I remember thinking, what? Like, it just seemed so contradictory to what they actually lived, because, you know, they're like, oh, it's all about family, but yet, yeah, it's the same thing. They're always off at meetings to help other people's families, but then it always gets left on the mother. She gets the burden of dealing with everything while the dad's off doing his, you know, manly duties. That sounds weird, but
you know what's funny though? Like, growing up, I heard more about my father from other people than I did seeing in myself.
You know what else I just thought of? Then that leaves like the whole entire mental load of raising a family and having a household to the wife, the mother, and like my relationship with my partner a little while ago was not great, and I was dealing with a lot of that mental load, and I could not imagine being a wife or a mother in the Mormon community and having to cop that whole like mental load of having to do everything while being perfect, while keeping your intimate life with your husband alive, because, you know, that's our responsibility as well. We need to shut up and do it whenever he wants it. Keeping the kids fed, healthy, in the church, keeping their beliefs alive. Like, it just is so much pressure for a woman to have in the church.
Not to mention that, you know, Mormon families are encouraged to have big families.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this isn't just for one kid. Like, I'm one of 7. That's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Like, I was talking to someone the other day. I don't remember who. It might have been my husband. And it's just like, having large families is cruel.
It's
like,
irresponsible, really.
Like, you may think that it's all fun and games and, oh, they'll all be friends. No. They're fighting for attention.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're one person. You cannot give attention to 7 kids at once. My husband's one of 9. You know, you cannot reasonably give enough attention to every single child to sustain their development if you've got that many kids. And it's cruel. It really is.
Yeah, I know. I have a lot of people banging on to me about having another child and like all of this. They're all members of the church, and I'm like, I cannot have another child, and I don't know how to say it, but I can't responsibly, emotionally, mentally, financially, or physically look after another child. And like, I have a lot of mental health issues. I'm like, I cannot do it, but it is pushed so much that, you know, it's just expected of you, and who cares if you can or cannot provide for these children with not only the attention that they need, but the mental help that they need, the financial help that they need, the physical help that they need. Like, you cannot look after at least more than 3 children. Like, that just, I don't know. I know you have 4 children. How do you find that?
Yeah, it's the same. It's just, it's almost like, how I'm the same. I'm the middle of 7 kids, and it's like, how did my parents do it? And especially thinking back, like the whole, you know, a lot of the fathers were gone most of the time, and then even when they were home, like I remember your brother Hiram, that he had to, when he was home, he actually didn't. I don't think he ever had any sort of calling that kept him away, but I think that he kind of took it upon himself because he didn't have that. He would try to do things in the home where he, like, I remember this one time where he's like, can you come in here? And it was into the office, and I went in there, and he's like, sat down, and he's like, okay, we're going to have a priesthood interview or something. He said, I can't remember what he worded. And I was like, this is like right in the, like, I was right in church. I was going to church. I was doing all that. And I just looked at him, and I'm like, no. And I just got up and left. I'm like, no, sorry, you don't interview me about my righteousness. No.
Yeah.
I love my brother, but that is ridiculous. Holy shit.
But you can see how that mentality is like a norm with the Mormons. It's just like, yeah, men are the top. Men are the rulers, and women need to be kept in line. Yeah, it's just it's a vicious cycle. And then it's just so sad to see the women raising their kids to be the same way. Like, it's, a vicious cycle. It's just like a corroded chain.
Wowza. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to deal with.
Yeah. My brain is like reeling right now.
I mean, we haven't been going for like 20 minutes.
Oh, shit. Damn.
So, yeah, there's I mean, a bit of a carry on from last episode. It's been a lot we've spoken about, and I think it's really highlighted the way the church impacts people is very similar. There's not so much of a, I had this wild experience, like, yeah, individual experiences, but the direction is the same. How do you see the church now? Like, when you look at the church, like, I know off air we were talking about how the missionaries, they just keep showing up because they keep showing up. And your youngest has been talking to the missionaries, and he's like, wow, this is different. This is interesting because, from my understanding, he wasn't really exposed to the church because he's a lot younger than the other kids. How does that play into your life now and how you view the church?
Oh, how I view the church. Actually, that's interesting because when the missionaries did start to come back, they were trying to kind of ask me the same things, but I think that it kind of backfired on him because they were asking things like, well, what do you miss? Like, you grew up in the church. What do you miss about the church? And I said, honestly,
The misogyny.
I said, honestly, not a lot. And I think that they were just like, oh, wait, what? And I said, look, I just felt like there was a lot of pressure and a lot of control and a lot of responsibility that didn't need to be put on already having the responsibility of being a parent. But yeah, as far as how I see the church, I just think of it as very controlling. But I think most, if not all churches are controlling. But yeah, I just think of it as a controlling method. But at the same time, it's tricky. It's seriously so tricky because even I'm the middle of 7, and another one of my brothers, he doesn't go to church either, and we were talking about it, and he was sitting there saying kind of the same thing that I've said, which is, yeah, it kind of sucks that we did kind of have to do things that we didn't necessarily choose, but we both look back now, and he's like, you know what? But I learned to, and he's sitting there naming all the stuff that he went to, and he's like, I learned this from church and this from church, and he said even things like, public speaking,
yeah,
and singing. Being able to organize a meeting or a get together. Like, he went through and he listed things. I'm like, yeah, that's really good point. So I think that there are good things about the church, but is it worth it? I don't know. just having my youngest being kind of interested in the church, which surprises me. And I'm just like, well, I'll support him in his choices, but I'm not going to go back.
It's interesting. I'm going to pull this little topic apart. So, let's go to the public speaking, right? So we are used to people being able to get up, give a talk, give a testimony, and you're a little bit nervous, but you're able to do it. And you're able to confidently speak, you know where to stand for the microphone. It's not some awkward experience when you get up there. Now, working in the funeral industry, I see people that have never done that in their life. And they get up there and it's hella awkward. They don't know where to stand. They can't hear themselves in the microphone. They're super nervous, and it's a mess. And I was talking to my boss, and he's like, oh, do you like public speaking? And I'm like, oh, I wouldn't say I love it. No one loves it. Some people do. I mean, I'll have a TED Talk one day. But I'm confident when I speak in public. I'm not afraid to get up in front of a group of people and hold a microphone and hear my own voice. It's not abnormal because that's how I was conditioned growing up. You had to, from an early age, from primary, as soon as you could talk, you were up on that stage giving talks. Like, I remember that, primary presentation? These kids, as soon as they can talk, they get in a line and they say their little piece in front of the microphone, in front of the whole congregation. When I was 12, I was asked to do a talk at state conference. Shit, that was scary. Like, that's a lot of people. It just keeps going. You can't see the end. But you get used to it. And once you get outside the church, you see that people don't have those skills. I was at church humming or singing to some song, and it was at a funeral again. It's all coming back at funerals because I work with a lot of older people, and there's a lot of some similarities because I deal with a lot of religion. And I was at this Christian service, and they were singing some hymns. You know them, and it's ingrained into your whole life. And I was just singing along to it, and they're like, "Oh, you can sing." I'm like, "Not really. Like, my pitch is always off, unless it's choir singing, and I can sing in a choir because I was taught to do that." It's fascinating because, like you were saying, your brother can get up there and talk and speak, but you go to Joe Bloggs on the street, no, I'm not doing that.
That reminds me, I don't know if I've said it on air, but with my reading this book called Do As I Say by Sarah Steele about cults, she interviews a lot of people and talks about their experiences and kind of breaks them all down. And I just remember very distinctly being at a point where I'm like, like, I would think, like, oh yeah, like the church did teach me all of these things. Like, how can I feel this way about this church when it taught me so many things? But then there was, I can't remember his name, but he said that when he was part of the cult, yeah, like it changed his life. It did make him a better person, but it was still a cult and still an unhealthy way of living. And I was like, oh my God, like it is okay to accept that, yes, I learned good things while I was there. And just because, well, I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but I do feel like the church is a cult. Like that word to me has kind of become more neutral rather than immediately hearing it and thinking about, you know, like mass unaliving. And yeah, it's kind of like an organization used to manipulate and control a group of people. Yeah. And it's okay to still learn good things while admitting, yeah, okay, that's still it's still an unhealthy way of thinking and feeling and living my life, and moving past that while keeping the good things.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. It's because you do want to, you know, we can cherry pick in our own little ways where we take the good that we've learned from our conditioning, which is exactly, you know, we've all been conditioned. But there are some good things that kind, you know, like, you know, when you can break it down and say, you know, like they say, pray morning and night. I kind of try to do the same thing, but I don't like even saying my prayers. I don't like saying, you know, but you know, you can change it into meditation or, you know, or journaling. Like basically it's coming down to kind of grounding yourself and kind of tuning in with yourself. So I think that, I think that that's how cults kind of get going, is that it's people that are trying to get a group as opposed to going internal and doing the work internally, which is what I think we should do.
Like we spoke about a few episodes ago, you're taking that power within and you're assigning it to a third party. And a third party specifically that's not there. You can't see them, you can't hear them, you can't feel them. They're not there, and in my opinion, don't exist. And you're assigning all of your power over to them. So whatever goes good, you give it to them. And whatever goes bad, even if it's your own consequences, it was all part of the plan. You know, you have to take personal responsibility for your life. It's up to me how I choose to act, feel, do, you know, live. It's not up to a third party to do that. I have control over my own life. I don't have control over the influence and actions that other people have on my life, but I have control over how I react to that. And that's an important part, you know. We could start a cult.
Let's do it.
We're accepting tithing.
I've done my studies. I know how to start one. I know what goes into it.
Who's bringing the Kool-Aid?
Who's thirsty?
But yeah, I mean, it's a valid point. Is, you know, the way we see the church now is very different to how you see it when you're inside. You can talk to any TBN and they will tell you the ass shines out of Jesus's ass. The sun shines out of Jesus's ass.
I've got a good visual going on. So.
Oh God, I'm never gonna unsee that.
It's one of those days today, I'll tell you what. But that's the thing is, you know, they just completely hazed over. There's no version of logic. There's no self-determination. There's nothing. It's just, this is what it is. I sign everything. I don't have to make decisions because it's already made for me.
And honestly, like, going on from that, I feel like I have done the most personal growth in my time out of the church. I'm realizing that these decisions are within my power, not somebody else's decisions. Like, that's like the consequences, the good things. Like, my self-confidence has grown and my ability to, not problem solve, but like kind of see, okay, I did this thing wrong and that was because of this action, and kind of change my behavior or the way I do things because of taking my power back from that third party.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's why I still have no idea how I had 3 kids and raised them in the church as long as I did. But then, yes, then I divorced and remarried an atheist. And so there were different kind of rules put in place, which I still working on that. I'm breaking that pattern, guys. Don't worry, I'm fine. But yeah, the whole. I think that the cracks had already been formed at that point when I remarried and had my last child, and I think just thinking, like, sure, you do things on, autopilot almost, but then once those cracks form and you start questioning things, then it's like when I had my last kid, I'm like, you know what? Is it fair that I'm kind of making choices for him? It's just that was definitely a big thing for me that kind of started pulling me further away from the church, was that, like, I'm not giving him choice. And is that fair?
Exactly. And like I think I was talking about earlier, I had some messages from someone Daisy goes to church on Sunday with my parents, and they're like, how could you do that? Like, you say all these bad things about the church and yet send your child to church. And I'm like, well, like, she asked me to go to church. Yes, she's 2. And I do feel like she's 2. She plays with Play-Doh and she has her friends. Like, she literally goes to church because she wants to see her friends and her uncles are there. But the moment she says she doesn't want to go to church, that's it. That's done. And it's not my job to make that decision. It's not my job to tell her, okay, you have to go to church every day, or no, you're not allowed to go to church. It's her decision, but my responsibility as her mum to support her and love her throughout whatever journey she chooses. Yeah.
And like it's a good point, because I remember as a kid, yes, early on you go into primary and things like that, but there came a point where I started saying, I don't want to go to church. I don't want to go to church. Not too bad, you got to go. And that's what it is. You just have to deal with it.
But like in my case, when I was going through my first divorce, I ended up I was living with my mom, and I was 29, I believe. I think I turned 30 when I was living there. And one day I had gone to church, and she lived right next to the church, and went to sacrament, and I don't even remember what happened. I was just not doing well. I was going through a divorce, and it was just not a good time in my life. And I was like, you know what? I can't take this. So I walked home. And she came home after she had gone to her meetings, and remember, I'm 29, and she said, when you live under my roof, you will follow my rules.
Shit.
That's so bizarre to me, because I had a conversation with one of my cousins, and the Mormons have that rule. When you're in my house, you go to church, you do all this stuff. But when they're in my house, it's like, oh no, like, we still want to pray over the food. And I'm like, it's my house, it's my rules. Like, we don't do that here.
Fair's fair.
And it's just so
it's only
one-sided.
Fair when it works for them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, as soon as it's not what they want to do, it's all hell breaks loose.
Yep.
Wow. What a discussion. I think this has been very therapeutic.
I feel so good.
I feel a lot lighter now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're getting towards the end of this. We're being mindful of the time in our church meeting. So, Lenora, do you have anything you want to say? Anything specifically that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, I think that the only thing that I really did think about when coming here was, just doing that thought of what was the shelf breaker for me. And I do know that was a big one, just thinking about what am I forcing my kids to do? What decisions am I making on their behalf? But also, because I grew up in a small Mormon town, I would hear stories of things that had happened there, and from some of the families that were like staunch Mormons, and then all of a sudden they don't go to church anymore, and which was shocking. But then I started hearing stories about, like, a boy that was in a few grades above me in school, and he left the church, and it was, I think you've even talked about him before, Eldon Karchner. Yeah. Like, his story was, shout out to my friend James, who he introduced me. He was like, you've got to watch Eldon's story. And that was early on. And that was like mind shattering, because I couldn't believe what this poor guy went through, and just to know that, that's how it works. And I just think that that was a huge one for me, the whole kind of, I don't know if hatred, I think that you guys have even said it as well. It's like, oh, you don't hate the sinner, you hate the sin. And I'm like, okay, let's pull that one apart. Okay. If this is an abomination, you could just kind of play with it and just say, okay, we're all, supposedly made by God's hand. So why are there animals that have sex with the same sex?
Why are there penguins adopting, gay penguins adopting?
That's literally the cutest thing I ever read. Oh, I love those daddy penguins.
But see, that's what I mean, like, just things like that. It's like there's so many flaws, and really when it comes right down to it, it's like, I don't know, I just think that it's, I'm not out to turn anybody away from any church. I'm just out to, I don't know, kind of nudge people to think for yourselves, like, for crying out loud. I was going to say you only live once, but I don't believe that. Yeah.
Here's my scientific opinion of the week. So, we've just ticked over 8 billion people in the world. Is it 8 or 7? 8. 8, yeah. Like, that's a big milestone. And, apart from more people being comfortable to come out as gay, I think that it's actually a genetic evolutionary trait to reduce population of the world.
Yeah.
The gays.
Wow, why does that make sense? What the heck? That makes more sense than Joseph Smith seeing some hoodoo god.
We're starting the gay cult.
Let's go.
No children though.
Poor kids.
Well, I think that about concludes our fast and testimony meeting for today.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll have to have you back, Lenora.
Yeah, definitely. That would be awesome.
We'll bring you back as a guest presenter when Sister Donna decides she doesn't want to be here.
Nice.
But thank you again for joining us today. We really do appreciate it, and we're glad that you're able to enjoy it as we do. These sessions for us, they are therapeutic. We do it because we love doing it. We don't make any money out of this. Again, let us know if you want to pay tithing. We don't make any money out of this, and we do it because we know there are people out there just like us. We benefit from talking about this, and we don't want you to feel alone. And so if you do want to reach out, we would love to hear from you. It doesn't have to be public. It can be anonymous. We don't have to talk about it on the podcast. We can just talk to you. But if you do want to reach out, please email us, onceuponamormon@gmail.com.
And our social media is Once Upon a Mormon, and it doesn't matter about the spaces because we're not that famous.
So we hope you have enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to meeting with you next week. And I think the episode I recorded a few weeks ago will be the next episode because I haven't edited it yet. So
what are you doing, Brother Hiram?
It's a hard job doing this. Yeah. So thanks again, and we will see you soon.
Bye.
See ya.
This is me. Hello world. This is me. Do you remember the Saddle Club?
Yes.
That brings back childhood memories.
Ooh, flashbacks.
Hello world. This is me.
Life can be
fun for everyone.
That's all I remember.
Yeah, that's all I remember as well.